that doesn't go away. So we all might deal with some trauma, but what we won't allow to do is to traumatize us. It won't harass us. It won't continue to be our ongoing pain because we know that God works everything for our good. And we can have some personal trauma, things that happen to us personally. We can have some family trauma, and we've had some family trauma here in this church. And then we can have some generational trauma. Now, when the last time I came in here, we talked about God sees things generationally. And when God sees a seed, he sees a forest. And so when God sees a seed, he can see that the seed can make a tree, the tree can make a forest. When God saw Abraham, he said, "You're a father of many nations." So when he saw Abraham, he saw Isaac and Jacob. And matter of fact, a lot of times he referred to himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That shows you that God has a generational viewpoint. The devil also knows that God has a generational viewpoint. And in his job is to frustrate the generations, to stop you from doing the call of God that he has on your life. And this is called generational trauma. Generational trauma is when the impact of a traumatic event isn't limited to the person who directly experienced it. It can also influence their children, their grandchildren, and even their community. So you didn't experience the trauma, but you're living it, and you never experienced it. Now, this is the opposite of what I talked to you about with Joseph. Now, I wanted to remind you that Joseph is in Genesis chapter 37 through 47. So for those of you who are online, I want you to go back and read the story. But in Joseph's case, Joseph got sold by his brothers. He got lied on. He got forgotten. The devil tried to traumatize him. He had some personal trauma. He had some family trauma. And let me just say, if you know, if you're a Bible scholar, you'll know that Jacob, his father, was a trickster and a liar, and he stole his twin brother's birthright. His uncle, well, let's start with his mother, was a trickster because she helped him steal his brother's birthright. His mother's brother was a trickster and stole and actually gave him a wife that he wasn't supposed to have and the one he didn't love and make him work 7 more years to get the one he loved. So it was a whole generation of tricksters, and he himself got tricked by his own kids to make him think that his own son was dead. That's generational trauma. That's family trauma. And then he had personal trauma. So at the very end, Joseph was innocent, but still he had to be resilient against the family trauma. Now, last time we were here, we talked about resilience is to be able to bounce back. This is how we not become traumatized. That we have trauma, but we don't become traumatized is because we have to become resilient and be able to bounce back. Now, generational trauma is very tricky because generational trauma is sometimes you don't know that you really got it or you got something, you got anger, frustration or something. You don't know why. A person told a story of for generations, people have been cooking pot roast and they would cut it in half because they always thought that the pot roast tasted better because it was cut in half because great-grandma always did it that way. So they would cut the pot roast in half and put it in a small pan because it always tastes better in a small pan. So they went to a family reunion and made great-grandma's great cousin, an old lady, and they went up to her and said, "We always loved great-grandma's pot roast, and we make it this way all the time, and it's the best tasting pot roast." And the great cousin said, "You know why she cut the pot roast in half?" And they said, "No, because she only had a small pan." So for generations, these people have been cutting the pot roast in half, thinking that it's the best recipe for pot roast, not understanding that it was because grandma had a small pan. This is the reason. See, you could carry something for generations and not knowing that you have it. Now, last week I asked you a question. What did your ancestors, your grandma, your great-grandma pray for that you are supposed to be receiving right now? That's the generational blessing that I asked you about. But the question I have to ask you right now is, yeah, what are you carrying that you're not supposed to be carrying right now? Now, I talked about pot roast and I talked about Joseph, but I'm going to bring it home today. Breast cancer. In my family, breast cancer is an issue. And it's causing some personal trauma, some family trauma, right? My mom has breast cancer, and Leona has breast cancer, Almeda had breast cancer. And for some of you, breast cancer is also a trauma. And without knowing, there's just a little bit of fear sitting in there saying, is it me next? Or am I going to get it next? Or can my children have it because of this like family trauma that's happening? And so the question is, are we going to live our best lives under the anointing of God to say, by his stripes I'm healed? That God works everything for my good? That greater is he that's in me than he that is in the world? Or will we live with stress, anxiety, frustration, waiting for something to happen that may not ever happen to us? See, this is fear. God said that God has not given us the spirit of fear, but the spirit of power, the spirit of love, and the spirit of sound mind. Now, I know this is not a Christmas message, but what I'm trying to tell you is we can't take fear until the next year. You know what the Lord told me? In 2024, God will give us open doors, but we can't go through the open door with fear because we won't do the thing he called us to do. We'll be too scared because you know what? Back in the back of our minds, we'll go, I don't know, because something just might creep up on me and I'm not for sure. I can't do it because something might just happen. And I don't know, because you have your own personal trauma. You have your own family trauma, and you have your own generational trauma. I'm just speaking about ours because I know breast cancer is trying to be sneaky right now. I get it. And I'll call it out because you know what? I'm calling it out because it thinks it's got a hold and it doesn't. Because our God is greater. And Leona is in a better place. She is not suffering. So we'll take it. We say God is good. We got the victory. We don't have to be afraid. So I want to talk to you today about a person who got called and couldn't do the job because of his generational trauma. Let's turn to 1 Samuel 9, 1 through 8. Because he's one of my favorite people, and he also makes me very sad. Because why couldn't he do it? Let's start with verse 1, and this is the NIV. There was a Benjamite, a man of standing, whose name was Kish, son of Abiel, the son of Zerah, the son of Bechorath. And I'm going to skip to verse 2 because I just don't want to keep reading these names. And Kish had a son named Saul, as handsome as a young man could be, found anywhere in Israel. And he was a head taller than anyone else. Now the donkeys belonging to Saul's father Kish were lost. And Kish said to his son, take one of the servants with you and go and look for the donkeys. So he passed through the hill country of Ephraim and through the area of Delicia, but they did not find them. They went into the district of Shalem, but the donkeys were not there. Then they passed through the territory of Benjamin, but they did not find them. When they reached to the district of Zoph, Saul said to the servant who was with him, come, let's go back. Our father will be thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us now. But the servant replied, look, in the town there's a man of God. He's highly respected, and everything he says comes true. Let's go there. Perhaps he could tell us what to take. Saul said to the servant, if we go, what can we give this man? The food in our sack is gone. We have no gift to take to the man of God. What do we have? And the servant answered back to him, look, I have a quarter of a shekel. So he had a silver coin. I'll give it to the man of God so that he'll tell us which way to take. And it says, formerly in Israel, if someone would inquire of God, they would say, come, let us go see the seer, because the prophet of today used to be called a seer. So that's 1 through 8. Let's skip to 19. They find Samuel. He says, I am the seer. Samuel says, go up ahead of me to the high place, for today you are to eat with me. In the morning I will send you on your way and tell you all that's in your heart. As for the donkey you lost 3 days ago, do not worry about them. They have been found. And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned? If not to you and your whole family line. He's saying, you're special. You're going to be the king of Israel and your whole family line. And Saul answered, but am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans of Benjamin? Why do you say such a thing to me? So he's told from the man of God that he's going to be the king of Israel. And the first thing he says is, am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans? Why do you say such a thing to me? Well, guys, first of all, you could say, well, why is this important? Well, if you know Bible history, Benjamites were a very small tribe. Benjamites were scandalous. They were left-hand fighters. And even if you grew up right-handed, they actually made the people left-handed, because it's something when somebody comes after you from the left side and you don't expect it. So they trained their men to be left-hand fighters, and they were dog fighters. I'm talking about they were really good. And my daughter, Diamond, back here is a left-handed basketball player. And it's nothing like when somebody run up to you and pop the ball out from the left side. People don't know what to do. And so these left-handed people were great fighters. So in the history of the Benjamites, a man comes to their town, and an old man says, oh, these are strangers. So he invites them to his house. And the Benjamite men come to the house and says, I want to have sex with this man. They don't even know him. And they go, what? And the man sends his concubine, which is like his mistress, out there to those people. And they kill her overnight. And word gets across the other 11 tribes of Israel, the Benjaminites are foul. We got to fight them. All of Israel, the 11 other tribes, went to fight the Benjamites and lost twice. 11 tribes against the Benjamites and lost twice. That's how good of a fighter they were. When the 11 tribes, they had to go to God and say, should we fight them again, because they were that good? God said yes. When they fought them, they left only 200 men left alive. They killed the men, the women, the children, and everything. They left 200 of them alive. And when they went to seek God at the very end, they asked all the tribes to come and seek God. One tribe didn't show up. They went and killed them too. And there were virgins. They left virgins left. And then the men of Benjamin come and stole. They didn't ask them. Stole these women and then started a new tribe with them. So they were a very small tribe because they were scandalous and foul. Okay, let's start there. So he has trauma from the past history of what happened. You see that? He came from a scandalous people that now they look down on him because they're a small tribe because of what they did in the past. But he forgot one thing. God called him. It doesn't make sense. Remember we said last week, favor's not fair. When God calls you, he gives you the skills and the tools necessary to do the job. So he equips you. So he called him. God knew he was from the scandalous tribe, but yet he still called him. And so he called him to do the work. But yet, because of his history, he's feeling very insecure about the call. So let's see. Now, in his life, we know from what we just read, what excuses did he have besides generational trauma? Well, he had servants, so he was kind of rich, wasn't he? And if you notice, his servants had money. Now, wait a minute. When your servants got some money to spare, to give to the preacher, that means that you must got some money, because he didn't say, pay me back. He said, I found a silver coin right here. When your servant got enough money to spare, that means you might be rich. So he was rich. He was good looking. They said he was better looking than most, and he stood taller than most people. So he was pretty, he was rich, and he was tall. He got called. God called him. Okay? So let's go to chapter 10, verses 1 through 7. So then Samuel took a flask of oil and poured it on Saul's head and kissed him, saying, has not the Lord anointed you to be ruler over his inheritance? When you leave me today, you'll meet 2 men near Rachel's tomb at Zelzah on the border of Benjamin. They will say to you, the donkeys you set out to look for have been found, and now your father has stopped thinking about them and is worried about you. He's asking, what should I do about my son? He also had a dad that cared about him. Then you will go on from there until you reach the tree of Tabor. 3 men coming up to worship God at Bethel will meet you there. One will be carrying 3 young goats, the other one 3 loaves of bread, and another a skin of wine. They will greet you and offer you 2 loaves of bread, which you will accept from them. After that, you will go to Gibeah of God, where there's a Philistine outpost. As you approach the town, you will meet a procession of prophets coming down from the high place with lyres and timbrels and pipes and harps being played before them, and they will prophesy. The Spirit of the Lord will come powerfully upon you. Here's the equipping. And you will prophesy with them, and you will be changed into a different person. Do you hear that? There's tools and the skills necessary to do the job. You'll be changed into a different person. And these signs are fulfilled. Once these signs are fulfilled, do whatever your hands find to do, for God is with you. And guess what? They came to pass. He prophesied. And people said, hey, is he a prophet now? So just like Joseph, if God's going to give you something, a challenge, what does it do? It causes you to sharpen a skill. So what does God do? He gives them a challenge right away. But what happens? The question is, what happens? Okay, he started right away with the spirit of fear. Let's go to Samuel 10:17 through 27. Samuel summons the people of Israel to the Lord at Mizpah and said to them, this is what the Lord of God says. I brought Israel up to Egypt and delivered you from the power of Egypt and the kings that oppressed you. And now you rejected God, who saves you out of all the distress and calamity, and now have said, no, appoint us a king. Verse 20. When Samuel had all of Israel come forward by tribes, the tribe of Benjamin was taken by lot. God knew it was Benjamin. Then he brought forth the tribe of Benjamin, clan by clan. Finally, Saul, son of Kish, was taken. But when they looked for him, he was nowhere to be found. So they inquired further from the Lord, has the man come here yet? And the Lord said, yes, he has hidden himself among the supplies. They ran and brought him out. As he stood among the people, he was a head taller than any of the others. Samuel said to all the people, "Do you see the man that the Lord has chosen? There is no one like him among all the people." So at the time of his calling, what was he doing? He had just prophesied. He had just gotten the confirmation. He had been given the skills and the tools. And when it was time, he was hiding from his generational trauma. He couldn't get past it. The challenge comes when a foreign king attacks Israel. Israel tries to negotiate, and the king says, "Okay, I'll negotiate, but I have to gouge the eye out of each man's right eye if we'll negotiate." And Saul stepped up and said, "This will not happen. We were going to go to fight." And so the people, when Saul did this, decided to follow Saul. And Samuel told Saul, Samuel was the prophet of that time, he said, "Wait 7 days for me to come, and I will bless this war and be there." And Saul does not wait because he's afraid of the people. Let's look at Samuel 13, 1 through 15. Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. Saul chose 3,000 men from Israel. 2,000 came with him to the fight. Let's go down. Jonathan attacked the Philistines, this is verse 3, at the outpost of Geba, and the Philistines heard about them. Then Saul had the trumpet blown throughout the land and said, "Let the Hebrews hear." So all of Israel heard the news. Saul had attacked the Philistine outposts, and now Israel became obnoxious to the Philistine, and the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. The Philistines assembled to fight Israel with 3,000 chariots, 6,000 charioteers, and soldiers so numerous as the sand on the seashore. Verse 6, the Israelites saw the situation was critical and that there was an army hard pressed. They hid in the caves and the thickets, among the rocks and the pits and the cisterns. And some Hebrews even crossed the Jordan at the land of Gad of Gilead. Saul remained at Gilgal, and all the troops with him were quaking in fear. He waited 7 days, the time that Samuel had set. But Samuel did not come to Gilgal, and Saul's men began to scatter. So he said, "Bring me the burnt offering." Now that was his job. He not the priest, Samuel the priest. He said, "Bring me the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings." And Saul offered up the burnt offerings. Just as he finished offering, Samuel arrived, and Saul went out to greet him. Samuel said, "What have you done?" Saul replied, "When I saw the men were scattering, and that you did not come at the set time, and that the Philistines were assembling in Michmash, I thought, now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt compelled to offer the burnt offering." And Samuel said, "You have done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. If you had, you would have established your kingdom over Israel for a long time. But now your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought out another man after his own heart and appointed him ruler over the people, because you have not kept the Lord's command." He saw the people scattering. He saw, and instead of stepping up and being a king and giving a good word, "We got this, we can do this, I'm the leader, God is with us," he instead tried to do somebody else's job, being an imitation priest. You can't do the priest's job. You're trying to be somebody that you're not because you're not comfortable being yourself. Whatever God's called you to do, be comfortable doing that. You can't do my job. You got to do your job. Do what God called you to do. Walk into that. Feel good about that. Love that, because that's what you got the tools and the skills to do. He can't do the prophet's job. And because of that, He's slowly but surely messing up his call. The final nail in the coffin comes when God specifically tells him to do one specific thing. He tells him, listen, the Amalekites, when the people were going through Egypt, and they were coming from Egypt through the wilderness to get to the promised land, the Amalekites were dirty, nasty. They were coming in and they were picking off kids. They were stealing women. So while they're walking in a line, they would come off, and you know, like in those jungle shows, how the lions will see the billy goat looking things, and they'll come in and just steal one of them off. The little one that's straggling along. This is what they were doing, stealing people. And while they were weak, they were stealing. They didn't have any armor. They didn't have anything. They would come and take them. And God said, while my people were going through the wilderness, these people were nasty to my people. He gave Saul one thing. He said, go after them. Kill every last one of them. Kill their sheep. Kill the kids. Kill the mama. Kill the daddy. Kill the king. Leave nothing. Leave nothing. And Saul said, okay, I fully understand it. I got this. Well, let's turn to 15. 15, 1 through 3. Samuel says to Saul, and let me tell you this. Samuel loved Saul. Now, I know that Samuel's not in the book of Kings, but let me tell you, Samuel was like the first king of Israel, really. Even though he was a prophet, he led the people, but they really, really, really wanted a king. But Samuel loved Saul, and he grieved when God said that Saul couldn't be king anymore because he loved him. So Samuel said to Saul, I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over the people. So listen now to the message from the Lord. Now, this is the key. When somebody got to tell you, I'm your doctor, listen to what I got to say, they saying that because you got a listening problem. I need for you to hear me, what I got to say, because you got a little bit of a listening problem, okay? I am the one the Lord sent to anoint you king over the people of Israel. So listen to the message from the Lord. This is what the Lord says. I will punish the Amalekites for what they did to Israel when they waylaid them when they came up from Egypt. Now go, attack the Amalekites and totally destroy all that belongs to them. Do not spare them. Put the men to death, the women, children, infants, cattle, sheep, camels, and donkeys. Everybody was in trouble. So Saul summoned the men and mustered them to Telaim, 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 from Judah. Saul went to the city of Amalek and set an ambush for them. So, verse 7, Saul attacked them all the way to Havilah to Shur, near the eastern border of Egypt. He took Agag, the king of the Amalekites, alive. And all the people he totally destroyed with the sword. But I can't really, when you say all the people, you can't say all of them because that would include the king. So you have to probably say most or some of the people he destroyed with the sword, or maybe except the king he destroyed with the sword. But Saul and the army spared Agag and the best sheep and cattle and the fat calves and the lambs, everything that was good. Now, I read this one book, and they said in that time, to get the message out to all the people to save the good stuff was an incredible effort because they were in regiments. So somebody had to go from regiment to regiment and say, King Saul said, save the good stuff. Because originally what they all heard was, kill everything. But somehow the message, because this is not like we could text message everybody and say, save the good stuff. There was a concerted effort to make sure that the good stuff was saved. So don't say like, I made a mistake and disobeyed the Lord. No, you did it on purpose. I purposely disobeyed the Lord. And they saved everything that was good. These were uh, these they were unwilling to destroy completely, but everything that was despised and weak totally destroyed. Then the word of the Lord came to Samuel. Oh man, that night Samuel couldn't sleep. The Lord said, I regret that I have made Saul king because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instruction. Samuel was angry, and he cried out to the Lord all night. Early the next morning, he got up and went to meet Saul. But he was told, Saul is already going to Carmel. He has set up a monument in his own honor. Now, I know it looks like he has a lot of pride when somebody sets up a monument in their own honor, but yet it actually is a reflection of his own fear and his own insecurity to set up a monument in your own honor. Because honestly, you already the king. People already kind of worship you already. So why do you need a monument? Because you're insecure about yourself. So you went up there to set up a monument in your own honor. For what? And has turned and gone down to Gilgal when Samuel reached him. Now, I want you to know by now Samuel is old. So it took him a minute to reach him. And by now, he probably cranky and mad. And when Samuel reached him, Saul said, the Lord bless you. I carried out the Lord's instruction. But Samuel said, what then is this bleating of sheep in my ear and the lowing of cattle that I hear? And Saul said, the soldiers, wait a minute. The soldiers brought them from the Amalekites. They spared the best of the sheep and cattle to sacrifice to the Lord your God. Did you hear that? He said, the Lord your God. Yeah, not my God. But we totally destroyed. It's the soldiers, the Lord your God, because he know God was mad. But when he want to take credit for the good stuff, he said, but we totally destroyed the rest. Now Samuel was old, and you know, like sometimes old people can't hold it. They don't be politically correct. He said, enough. Shut it up. Let me tell you what the Lord told me last night. And he said, tell me. Samuel said, although you were once small in your own eyes. Now he's saying you insecure. Although you was once small in your own eyes, did you not become the head of the tribe of Israel? He said, you were small, but yet you were called. Small but called. So for everybody who think you're small, you're still called. Don't have insecurity to stop doing the things God called you to do. The Lord anointed you king over Israel, and he sent you on a mission. Go, he said, completely destroy those wicked people, the Amalekites. Wage war against them until you have wiped them out. Why did you not obey the Lord? Why did you pounce on the plunder and do evil in the Lord's sight? He said, I did obey the Lord. I did obey the Lord. I went on the mission the Lord assigned me to. I completely destroyed the Amalekites and brought back Agag, their king. And the soldiers took the sheep and the cattle from the plunder, the best of what was devoted to God, in order to sacrifice them to the Lord your God at Gilgal. But Samuel replied, does the Lord delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as much as obeying the Lord? Now, this is something really important, because a lot of times we sacrifice things because we think God wants that when he really told us to do what he called us to do. When he really told us to do what he called us to do. So we taking some left turns and some right turns, trying not to do what he called us to do. Do what he called you to do, because that sacrifice is not as important than obedience to the Lord. He said to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams. For rebellion is like the sin of divination, and arrogance like evil of the I'm sorry, and arrogance like the evil of idolatry. Because you've rejected the word of the Lord, God has rejected you as king. And let me tell you, look what he does at the very end. Then Saul says to Samuel, I have sinned. I violate the Lord's command and your instructions. I was afraid of the men, so I gave in to them. You are king. You could take any of their wives, because y'all know David did it. You could take any of their money, their land, and anything, and yet you're afraid of the men. Generational trauma. Because you're from Benjamin. You were small but called. As Samuel turned to leave, Saul caught a hold of his hem of his robe and tore it. Samuel said to him, the Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to your neighbors, to one that's better than you, who has the glory of Israel. He who has the glory of Israel does not lie or change his mind, for he is not a human being that he should change his mind. And Saul replied, I have sinned, but he's still worried about the people. He said, I have sinned, but please honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel. He needed to be on his face crying before the Lord. That's what he needed to be. Come back with me so that I can worship the Lord your God. So Samuel went back with Saul, and Saul worshiped the Lord. And Samuel said, bring me Agag, king of the Amalekites. And Agag came to him in chains. And he thought, surely the bitterness of death is past. But Samuel says, as your sword has made women childless, so will your mother be childless among women. And Samuel put Agag to death before the Lord at Gilgal. God knew Saul's generational issues, but he still chose him. When he calls you, he gives you the skills and the tool necessary to do the job. Saul had the power to overcome his generational trauma. If you can pray and prophesy, that means that God can speak to you about yourself. Have you asked him, what am I carrying that I should not be carrying right now? What am I dealing with that I should not be dealing with right now? If you let it, fear can get out of control, become anxiety, and make you not move at all. It'll make you cripple and not do what God has called you to do.